Locked On Podcast Network presents Locked On Sports Today.
Cowboys quarterback Dak Prescott was spotted in a boot that doesn't exactly say Cowboys. How much concern is there in Dallas? Also, the Dodgers and Phillies are in the middle of what feels like an NL championship preview, and the NBA is ready for a race to the bottom for Cooper Flagg.
I'm Peter Bukowski, starting your day with the can't-miss stories and biggest debates in sports. You're Locked On Sports Today.
Searching all major sports. Found.
Let's start with the biggest story.
Well, they caught Dak Prescott out in public in a boot. Is it something to be worried about, or is it all just much ado about nothing? Here to break down Dak's injury, quote unquote, his future, and much more is Marcus Mosher of the Locked On Cowboys podcast. Marcus, obviously a lot of stuff being made right now with Dak Prescott wearing the boot. Is this really something that Cowboys fans should be concerned about, or is this more explainable in a different way?
I wear boots all the time and nobody gets that excited. So I don't know why this is totally different. But no, it's just we're in July, right? We're still weeks away from training camp. This is nonsense. Dak has a old injury that he suffered in 2020, worked it out a little too hard, got stepped on in OTAs, put on the boot to prevent it from getting worse. It's Ross. It's a non-issue. It's nothing to be concerned about at all.
It certainly feels like it's just one of those things where and look, it was such a high profile injury at that time too. It feels strange that people have just kind of forgotten that happened to this guy.
Yes. Well, and the other thing is, this came out on July 4th. There was no sports going on. We have no basketball. Right, yeah. We've had no NFL news forever. So this random story pops up and everybody gets all excited about it. It's something that we do not need to stress over at all. There's plenty of other things with the Cowboys that we can talk about that are way more substantial, not this random boot that he was wearing one day.
Yeah, people should have been way more interested in their burgers, hot dogs, and ribs, and they should have been worried about Dak Prescott's ankle. But when it does come to Dak Prescott, maybe one of the things that Cowboys fans are worried about right now is his contract. Right now, set up for a contract year in 2024. Will he play on that contract year, or do you think it's possible that an extension gets done before the season?
So the way that I've at least heard this, Ross, is that if we get to training camp and Dak does not have a contract extension done, pretty clearly he's going to play this year on the final year of his contract. It's worth pointing out he has a no franchise tag clause in his deal, which means he's going to be an unrestricted free agent going into the 2025 year. I'm getting the sense that I think Dak wants that. I think he wants the ability for the first time in his career to test the open market. The Cowboys would love to have him back, and I think there's a lot of people out there that believe maybe the Cowboys don't want him back. That's not the case at all. I think if the Cowboys offered him $60 million a year right now, I still don't know if Dak would take it, because I think he's interested in seeing how the season plays out and maybe seeing what other situations are out there should this year maybe not go as planned.
So I think one of the other big questions that comes up around Dak all the time is whether or not he's in the hot seat. But from that angle, it almost feels like the Cowboys could be just as much in the hot seat themselves for Dak Prescott if they don't get that deal done before training camp.
Jerry Jones used a very interesting phrase when talking about Dak a couple weeks ago. He said that he
tends to do that.
Yeah, well, yes. He said they're more recruiting Dak rather than trying to extend Dak. And what to me that means is like they're trying to convince Dak to re-sign here, sign a contract extension. And that was interesting. I think they're trying to say, hey, we have all this set up. We've got a young offensive line. We're going to sign CeeDee Lamb. We play in a dome. This is where you should be. Where Dak might be looking at other situations like a Kirk Cousins did, like a Matt Stafford, Tom Brady, Peyton Manning, and maybe looking at some other spot where they're being a little bit more willing to spend money to be competitive. It's very interesting time in Dallas right now.
Yeah, really interesting for sure. And I think the last thing I wanted to ask you about was exactly one of the things you alluded to there. Quote, we're going to re-sign CeeDee Lamb, you said. So how are things going on the CeeDee Lamb front for Dallas?
I mean, not great. I'm actually kind of shocked that he doesn't have a deal right now, because once Justin Jefferson signed his deal, it gave us a ceiling, right? And once Amon-Ra St. Brown signed his deal, I think he gave us a floor. I mean, we're talking about the difference in probably $1 or $2 million per year. It seems a little silly that a deal hasn't gotten done right now. I do feel confident that a deal will eventually get done. Now, does it get done in the next week? Does it get done 2 weeks into training camp? We'll see. But I have a hard time envisioning CeeDee Lamb not signing a contract at some point over the next 2 months.
Stay up to date all year long with the Dallas Cowboys by subscribing to Locked On Sports Today and Locked On Cowboys on your favorite podcast app and on YouTube. Thanks for making Locked On Sports Today your first listen. Coming up, the Dodgers and Phillies are locked up in an NL championship preview. But before we get to that, Kawhi Leonard is out for the Olympics, and you won't believe who replaced him. Game Time makes getting to the ballpark even faster and easier. Prices on the Game Time app actually go down as the first pitch gets closer with killer last-minute deals, all-in prices, and their best price guarantee. Game Time takes the guesswork out of buying tickets. They're obsessed with finding ways to help you save money on tickets. Game Time has deals on tickets right up to the start of the event, and even an hour after it starts, it's the best place to find last-minute tickets. Find exclusive flash deals and sponsored deals on tickets for football, basketball, baseball, comedy, concerts, theater, and more. And the Game Time guarantee means that you'll always get the best price. If you find tickets in the same section and row for less, Game Time will credit you 110% of the difference. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the free app, and new users will get $20 off of their first purchase with code Locked On. Terms apply. That's promo code Locked On, LOCKEDON, for $20 off your first purchase with Game Time. Download the Game Time app today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. If you're catching this episode after checking out your favorite Locked On podcast, don't forget to subscribe to Locked On Sports Today on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts so you never miss the latest episode. Kawhi Leonard is stepping down from playing for Team USA in this year's Olympics. In a statement that went out on Wednesday, USA Basketball implied that Leonard's decision was influenced by the Clippers and Team USA officials after observing training camp in Las Vegas over the past 3 days. So who's going to replace Kawhi Leonard? Well, in his place, maybe Damian Lillard? Nope. Jaylen Brown? Closer. Yeah, it's Boston Celtics guard Derek White. He will take Leonard's spot on the Olympic roster. White actually played with Team USA in the 2019 World Cup. In league-wide basketball news, the NBA has secured some lucrative media rights. The association agreed to terms on an 11-year agreement worth $76 billion, with a B, billion dollars. This will ensure that player salaries will continue to grow for a little while longer, among other things. A person familiar with negotiations told the Associated Press that networks have the term sheets, with the next step now being for the league's board of governors to approve the contracts. This new deal will go into effect for the 2025-2026 season. It is the longest and most lucrative media rights deal that the NBA has ever signed. Games will continue to be aired on ESPN and ABC, as well as some games also going to NBC and Amazon Prime. Meanwhile, TNT now has 5 days to match an offer in order to continue broadcasting games themselves. Over on the diamond, the Twins split a doubleheader with the White Sox.
Okay, Twins rained out last night, so we got some double header action today. Game 1, Bailey Ober on the mound. He goes 6 innings, 6 Ks, gives up 3 earned. All in all, you'll take that more nights than not. However, Twins bats just kind of went ice cold all of a sudden. Matt Wallner only run scored with the late inning solo shot. So Twins lose game 1, snap that 8-game winning streak versus the White Sox with a 3-1 loss. Game 2, just an hour later, Pablo on the mound, 5 innings, 4 hits, 2 earned for him. And that was just barely enough thanks to back-to-back home runs by Brooks Lee and Correa in the 6th. Jeffers with the go-ahead RBI in the 7th. That scored Byron Buxton. Duran comes in the 9th, ring him up, sit him down. Twins split the doubleheader. They take this series, though. They moved to 53-40 on the year, so 13 games above 500. Currently 5.5 games back from Cleveland, who's losing in the 4th inning as we speak.
The Los Angeles Dodgers may have dropped a tough one to the Philadelphia Phillies here in the regular season, but it's the postseason that's going to count. Here to help us break down where the Dodgers are and where they're going is Locked On Dodgers host Jeff Snyder. Jeff, as we take a look at this 3-4 loss for the Los Angeles Dodgers up against the Phillies, a lot of question marks already being hung out there about how this could potentially be a postseason matchup. Where do you see the Dodgers and Phillies kind of matching up team to team in the postseason? Could the Dodgers be able to get it done in a series?
You know, they're both clearly very good teams. The Phillies are probably the better team right now. I am a little bit cautious about these postseason preview series because I did this a couple years ago talking when the Dodgers were playing the Mets, talking about the NLCS preview.
Sure.
And then the Padres took both teams out. And then I did it last year when the Dodgers were playing the Braves, and then both teams lost in the first round. So, you know, I'm not going to call this an NLCS preview or anything, but the fact is right now, you know, a 4-3 game when 2 runs for the Phillies scored on weird defensive flukes.
Yep.
It was a very close game, and that game could have gone either way. It's much more indicative of what I would expect if they did meet up in the postseason. Obviously, Bryce Harper wasn't in the lineup for the Phillies. Mookie Betts, Will Smith, and Max Muncy weren't in the lineup for the Dodgers. But at least both teams had guys who are likely to pitch in the postseason pitching for them, unlike the 10-1 game yesterday, which was Bobby Miller, who isn't going to sniff the Dodgers postseason rotation against Zach Wheeler, probably the best the Phillies have. And so, you know, this game, I feel like, gave us a good idea of what we could expect. And this game could have gone either way. And I think if they met up in a series, I think the Phillies would probably be favored a little bit. But it really is a series that could go either way.
Yeah, things would certainly even up once the health is no longer a factor and all these other things as well, which hopefully would be the case in a postseason matchup. Leading up to the postseason between now and then, of course, is the trade deadline. Dodgers not super active in the trade deadline typically, or at least in recent years. Could that change this year? Like, do you expect them to maybe make some noise at the trade deadline or focus with what they have in the building already?
I'd be shocked if they're not active. They do not have they have plenty of holes, and their holes are very obvious and very glaring. They have names. Their names are Gavin Lux and Kike Hernandez and Chris Taylor. And you know, then if we want to get on the pitching side, there's question marks more than holes on the pitching side, because Tyler Glasnow, Yoshinobu Yamamoto are both currently on the injured list. Clayton Kershaw's not back from the injured list. Walker Buehler's on the injured list. Bobby Miller sent down to the minors. So really right now, Gavin Stone is the only guy in the Dodgers' current rotation who is a lock to be in their postseason rotation. And so, you know, the Dodgers obviously know more about the health of their guys than I do, but that's definitely going to be a factor as they are looking at the trade deadline and whether they go after pitching. They're definitely going to go after some bats because, I mean, I didn't even mention Kevin Biggio because he's already an afterthought. Right. Like he's, I've already written in that he's been DFA'd. I don't know when it's going to happen, but it's definitely going to happen. You know, they have holes that they need to fill, and I think they're going to be very aggressive because they also have a deep farm system and they have a looming 40-man roster crunch coming up because they have a lot of guys who are going to need to be on the 40-man roster. So they're going to need to make some trades, even if they didn't have holes at the big league level, throw in the holes. And it's just a perfect storm, assuming anybody trades, because now that 85 teams make the postseason, everybody thinks they have a chance. Who knows how many sellers there are going to be. But if there are teams selling, the Dodgers are definitely going to be buying.
Yeah, it makes a ton of sense, especially with that deep farm team. I think a lot of folks forget that those farm teams aren't just about developing talent. Sometimes they're about acquiring other talent from elsewhere just as much. So those pieces mean a lot. Speaking of pieces, you know, of course, it wouldn't be a Dodgers segment if we didn't talk about Shohei Ohtani. The Dodgers made a huge move this offseason bringing him in. How has the Shohei Ohtani experience been so far?
I mean, he's playing at an MVP level. He and Bryce Harper are battling for the MVP this year, and that's kind of what we expected. Even with, I mean, no DH has ever won the MVP award. If somebody's going to do it, it's going to be Shohei Ohtani. He is, if the voting happened right now, he is who should win the MVP award. You know, a lot can happen between now and then. I said last year that Mookie Betts should win it, but then the last month of the season happened and Ronald Acuna really separated himself and absolutely deserved it. So who knows what's going to happen, but Shohei Ohtani has been awesome. He's been a ton of fun to watch. And for me, the biggest thing as a fan is that every time he steps to the plate, something ridiculous can happen. And you don't get that with a lot of players. Like even guys who, he has a chance to hit a home run. Yeah, but it's not going to be 480 feet. You know, it's not going to be one of those that sounds like a shotgun going off. Like Shohei Ohtani is special and more fun to watch than, the last 6 years, I watched more Angel games than somebody who doesn't care about the Angels should have, because I've always loved watching Shohei Ohtani play. And it's been everything I could have hoped for so far.
Stay up to date all year long on the Los Angeles Dodgers by subscribing to Locked On Sports Today and Locked On Dodgers on your favorite podcast app and on YouTube. Coming up, Cooper Flagg is going to bring about a race to the bottom of the NBA this year. Prospects are prospects, but Cooper Flagg absolutely showed out against Team USA, and now everyone is buzzing. As Locked On NBA host John Corrales and Jake Madison discuss, everyone will be falling for Flagg.
Yeah, I think this is very real. When you look at a dude who's 6'9", going to Duke, and everyone already basically has him as the #1 overall pick, and then he does that well as a 17-year-old, and he's going to get a year of really good development. I look at the West in particular with this, right? Like, there's a couple teams in the East that you're like, okay, they're going to be bad and they're tanking. Detroit's one of them, right? Brooklyn's not going to be good. There's a couple other teams out there that's like, oh yeah, they're going to kind of be garbage. The Wizards too. But in the West, it's what, Portland, and that's kind of it, is the only like real team that feels out of it. You have a team like Houston that's going to go for it. The Utah Jazz are kind of on the border of this. The West is going to be a bloodbath, and if you fall into a hole early, if you're Houston, if you're Utah, does that then maybe kind of spurn you to making a trade earlier in the season to just blow it up and realize, like, yeah, we're not in the level of Minnesota or Denver or some of those other teams, so we need to retool here, and let's just start doing that now and get the jump on some of this, blow up our team, and then start tanking, within a month of competitiveness, and then they give up?
Yeah, I think that might be where this answer is real, where a team that is, you look at a mix that they've given a shot to, and you say, okay, this isn't working. Now I say this about Atlanta, who got the #1 overall pick without having to tank necessarily. So this does add an element into this kind of discussion. How much do you actually have to tank to get the #1 pick?
Look at a team like Detroit, right? Like, they've had the worst record basically 2 years in a row and didn't end up with the #1 overall pick.
Right.
Minnesota Vikings wide receiver Justin Jefferson told Rich Eisen on Wednesday that he wasn't mad at former Vikings quarterback for leaving the Vikings for the Atlanta Falcons this past season. All year, Jefferson had hoped that he would return, but he didn't demand it. Jefferson said on Eisen's show, "I'm not mad at him at all for that," to which I was really waiting for him to add the line, "I'm just disappointed." I mean, seriously, wouldn't that have just been the ultimate dig? I'd much rather someone be mad at me than disappointed, Dad. If you're catching this episode after checking out your favorite Locked On show, don't forget to subscribe to Locked On Sports Today on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts so you never miss the latest episodes. And if you're new to Locked On Sports Today, we're here for you, giving you the biggest stories in sports every day. Coming up with the next Locked On Sports Today, who is the biggest disappointment in MLB this season? So at least till tomorrow, stay Locked On Sports Today.
Locked On Podcast Network presents Locked On Sports Today.
For more episodes of Locked On Sports Today, go to our video on demand. Click on Sports at the top of your screen. There, you'll find past episodes of Locked On Sports Today, plus other Locked On shows on demand.